Hi there, gallery members and new viewers alike. Thanks for tuning in for this latest edition of Gridiron Gallery. If you haven't seen my channel before up until this point with new videos, recommend you like this one and subscribe for more. We got plenty of content on all your favorite football leagues. And for those gallery members out there, thank you as always for tuning in. Really can't appreciate you enough. Now, on to the show. Welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Gridiron Gallery. I'm your host, Zach Keilman, and as always, as the European League of Football season has concluded, its inaugural season ended with a spectacular championship game in Dusseldorf, Germany, or at least I would say spectacular. Joining me is Vince from Old Football Scouting Report to counter me to talk about the points on that game and some other topics. Aaron also, unfortunately, will not be able to join us for this edition. He is currently in Romania, and the time difference there has changed an hour, which has made it quite difficult for us to get together, really. And also, he's got a much more strict and stringent schedule for himself to keep up, so we don't want to interrupt that too much. Last episode, let's just say, was very tight, so we'll let him have his week off there. Many of the points we talk here, he's watched pieces of the game, so he'll have similar opinions, and he can add on later as needed. But to get into this thing, Vince, let's jump into the championship. So I don't know about you, but
game of the year.
Yeah, I was about to say game of the year, arguably one of the best football games of the weekend, and I'm talking like we're even throwing in NFL games. There were some good NFL games last weekend. Yeah. This one, if you're a football fan in general, you gotta love how this one played out.
Yeah, out of every league I've watched, every championship game I've watched this season, that was probably the best game I've watched all year. Just hands down. That was back and forth. It was exactly what we thought it would be, Yeah. It came down a lot closer than most people thought. I knew it was going to be a relatively close scoring game. I thought it was going to be a little lower scoring. I didn't think there was going to be as many touchdowns, but who would I be to complain about a bunch of touchdowns? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but yeah, it was a good game. I can't believe Anderson almost nailed that 63-yarder. That was so close. That would have been something wild because, you barely see a 60-yard field goal kicked in any type of league. So see that happening in a European league would be something crazy. But, came up short. There was a wild ending for sure. Both teams played their asses off until the very end. Both defenses made lots of big plays throughout the game. Offenses were just lighting it up.
Oh, yeah.
Playmakers were just making plays, and it's a great game, people, if anybody's got that complaint about that offense or was it a DPI or it was unnecessary roughness they called on Curtis Slater. It was definitely on replay. That was a clean hit, in my opinion. That looked like a clean hit. He went shoulder to chest, and it was just a violent hit that made the head jerk, and the head jerk is what got the flag.
Yeah, the reactionary flag, that was unfortunate. But
you know what?
Yeah,
he caught it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know
That's
what I mean?
That's
so
true.
They would have had first down anyway. I think there was a first down catch regardless.
It was.
It, would have been first down on the 15 or something, or whatever it was. First down on the 30, and they got first down on the 50. Whatever it was, the difference really wasn't much, even though it was, pretty, again, a bad call at the end of the stretch. You can't, once again, Sea Devils got to the championship game partially because of a bad call. So, karma comes around sometimes. But even then, look, you had a million other chances to ice that game. And again, it was still a complete catch. They were still first down without the flag. So I think the game played out the same way regardless.
I do find it funny you mentioned with the calls because one of the best pieces that the ELF has their own. There's a nice Discord server for them. Love chatting with some of those guys on there, and it was funny. You see some of the Panthers fans, or even those just watching the semifinals, going, this is just desserts for the Sea Devils getting a unnecessary call right there, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, look, it is what it is. There's going to be. I said it last time. The NFL still gets it wrong too. There's going to be bad calls no matter where you go. And I don't think that was like a game-breaking penalty right there. That really didn't shift the momentum. I think that Frankfurt was scoring that touchdown either way. One way or another, they were getting in the end zone at that point of the game, and I think everything would have played out the same exact way. Except, maybe in the theoretical split timeline, Phil gets that extra 3 feet that he needs to convert that field goal, but that's besides the point.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly, you're right. I mean, you got to consider that. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we talked in the preview of this game how special teams are coming to play. It was amazing how it was the deciding factor and how strategies were played out on both sides. I mean, the Galaxy just said, screw it with kicking. We're just going straight up, 2-point conversions every score, which was totally sporadic and actually changed how the game was even played out. And really, this contest could have possibly been even overtime, or the Sea Devils could have put it away just based on the fact that Frankfurt wasn't kicking. If you hit that chip shot right there on the second to last possession.
It was that 30-yarder that went the 36-yard or whatever that went wide left.
Exactly.
Say wide left is not even an accurate statement because it was like this close. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That really just snuck right past the upright. So.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised. No, and I'm stepping on your toes too. I was just surprised at the miss because he's nailing these like it's cake all season, and then right at the end this could have been an icing. Like I said, for how bad the Galaxy special teams are in terms of the kicking unit, that could have iced the game right there. Maybe just at least put them on edge where it's like, okay, you have to make it a make or break 2-point conversion, even if you charge down the field.
Yeah. Well, what I find interesting is that it was 8 seconds left. The clock was not running. They had the clock stopped at 8 seconds. And it was like first or second down, and they had another timeout. Like they could have run one more play to try to shave at least 5 yards off of that kick.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? When you're kicking from 63 yards out, any type of break.
At the end of the game, that's right. I thought the same thing.
They could have ran one more play potentially to, even if it's just like, dude, just run a quick 5-yard out, grab those extra 5 yards. Like the difference between a 63-yarder and a 58-yarder are worlds apart. And honestly, one play, you saw how close he was, dead center on that kick. He just needed that much more to get there. One quick little play could have potentially been the difference there, and they opted to just go right for the kick.
Right.
So there's another missed opportunity. But I mean, either way, great game.
Absolutely.
Great game. And I think the Sea Devils are going to come back twice as strong next year too. I think next year every team is going to take an even bigger step forward. Like, I don't even think the Galaxy, it's not even a matter of everyone taking a step up towards the Galaxy's level of play. I think they're going to take a step forward as well. I think league as a whole is just taking that next step forward going into year 2.
Well, and I don't even know if you're going to have the same champions just because of who we know is joining now.
Oh, yeah.
At least reconfirmed with 2 of them. Honestly, all 3 of these were either heavily rumored or like, okay, just tell us when the announcement is and we'll get going. And they're not done yet. We haven't even heard the rest of the teams, so we're still waiting on that. But to get this ball rolling, we teased how, or the league teased how it was going to talk about expansion teams. It didn't even wait till game day. They just said, screw it. Saturday, we'll just throw out all 3. Like roughly the same time. We'll just have all 3 roll out.
Like an hour apart. They staggered it a little bit.
Everybody
on there. So I wasn't expecting Ryan Fire to come Saturday. I figured like after they confirmed Vienna Vikings and Swarco Raiders, I was like, well, I mean, they have to be saving something for tomorrow. And then I just saw that Ryan Fire was in too. I was like, all right, there we go then. Yeah, I mean that I will say 100% one of the Austrian teams will be in the championship next year. I have no idea which one it'll be, but I know one of them. Because more than likely they're going to have to play each other for that championship spot. Because I mean, you're probably going to be in the same division, and the way that they did it with divisional playoffs. Even if they do, they're probably going to expand the playoff pool next year as well with how many more teams are coming in. I think no matter way you shake it, the two of them are going to have to go through each other to get to the championship in the first place. So, but I think, I think Vienna Vikings or Swarco Raiders, one of the two of them is making the championship. I won't guarantee that they will win the championship because, I mean, the level of competition is going to be pretty wide open now. You know, Galaxy are going to definitely be a favorite to run it again. I mean, Swarco Raiders and Vienna are probably going to be in the South Division. So if they're in the South, you know, I think the Dragons are going to take a big step forward going into year two because I think there's a lot of really top tier elite Spanish players that were not on the team. I've gone over that a handful of times as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, you know, a lot of those guys will be back. I think if their biggest concern was their offensive line, they're going to do more to make sure that they have the right offensive linemen on hand going into the season. And I think that, you know, that they would very easily have a title contender. I think the same goes for Centurions. You know, they were still right there. They were a playoff team already. They're already bringing back Madre London. We don't know what they'll do as far as, are they going to bring in an American QB? Are they going to try to bring back Quentin Pounds and run it with Weinrich again? I think, you know, just a handful of other pieces. I think part of it was that their defense was lacking too a little bit.
That was definitely what they need to stabilize.
So, you know, and like I think with you going into year two, I think a lot of guys that held out in the GFL are coming, and they're coming in droves. Like a lot of guys, and that people aren't really considering that right now. I think even a lot of the players that are going to be playing in the ELF don't even realize it right now because they just finished. Or they're still about to finish because the German Bowl's coming up. I think a lot of those guys are going to end up, you know, realizing that, you know, the ELF is a better option for the long term. It's like the GFL isn't growing or changing in any way, shape, or form. You know, like it's just going to continue to be what it is. You know, maybe they'll be able to get, you know, if they continued on as they were, yeah, maybe more fans would be coming to the championship game, and maybe you're starting to see 3,000 and 4,000 as your regular attendance figures, but there's not a whole lot of room for growth with what they're doing, and they're not doing enough media-wise either to justify it. And I think that the platform that the ELF is becoming, I think, is just proven to be the best in Europe. And I think a lot of guys that really doubted it going into year one, now if they have that contract offer again in year two, they are going to seriously reconsider. I also did hear rumors, apparently, that there's like multiple Swabish Hall Unicorns players who are like the prime top of European football. Apparently, a bunch of their players are interested in playing for the Surge. I don't know, I wouldn't say a bunch, but apparently that there's like enough where it's, you know, it could just be like 5 guys, 6 guys. But either way, that's going to be 6 top-tier players coming into a team that, you know, was struggling with depth in the first place. They had a lot of injuries early on, and then it was all guys that were coming up from the 3rd tier, 4th tier leagues, starting against a team like, you know, the Galaxy. That's rough, you know what I mean?
So yeah, just maybe a little bit, you know, maybe a bit.
I think each team is going to have all the German teams are going to have a lot stronger base of local talent, because I think a lot of guys that held out are going to be ready to make that move now.
So here's something I want to ask you. Where do you think that they will what part of Germany, or like what teams are you expecting maybe that they'll draw Dusseldorf's roster from?
The Dusseldorf Panthers. They're in GFL 2. They went like 0-16 in the top league, or 0-8, whatever it was, in 2019, and got relegated, right?
Okay.
They hired a new coach, hired an American, comes in, they've got like barely anybody there. on the roster. He recruits and builds almost the entire roster, and they go like 8-1-1.
Mm-hmm.
And then inexplicably they fired him at the end of the season.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't really know why. I don't think he knows why. I don't know if anybody really knows why. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. You know, they've got the GFL North played with 6 teams instead of 8 teams this season because of all of the ELF related, departures. The Hildesheim Invaders had dropped down to the 3rd tier, and the Elmshorn Fighting Pirates just folded in general. And part of that was because of COVID related things. They're just a younger club without a whole lot of capital to fall back on. So when they have to shut the lights off for a year and a half, it's just not easy to keep things up and running. But yeah, he's a free agent now as far as coaching goes, and he recruited almost the entire team for the Dusseldorf Panther, who just had a great season. And because of the I'm sorry, I got a little sidetracked. Because of the fact that only 6 teams played, they were bringing 2 teams up from the GFL2, the GFL2 North. So the Dusseldorf Panther were going back to the GFL1 underneath this coach anyway, and they fired him anyway. Don't understand why, but I think it'd be a great move for the Rhine Fire to pick him up. I had to look up the guy's name. I don't remember it at the exact moment in time, but I think it would be a great move for them to pick him up because, I mean, look, if he built the team himself, essentially recruited the team himself, then, I mean, why wouldn't you,
Yeah, you're talking about Douglas Fryer.
Yeah, Douglas Fryer, yeah. And yeah, I think if he's got, connections into the area to be able to, recruit a well put together team like that, I think that'd definitely be a great place to get started by bringing him on and seeing, what else he can do with the area and how many of those players would want to come with him because, I mean, just giving him the boot like that,
right?
But at the same time, there's also apparently been discussions that the Dusseldorf Panther want to work with Rhine Fire. And I don't know how exactly, in what way they would want to work. You know what I mean? Because the Cologne Centurions did have an agreement with the Cologne Falcons, which were a GFL 3rd tier league team. And, they sent probably like 5 or 6 of their best players up to the Centurions. And then I think Madre London and Danny Farley were helping coach the youth program for the Cologne Falcons. It was some kind of deal like that. So maybe they're looking to work something like that. That could be a way to, okay, here's 5 of our best players, give us some coaching, but don't take our entire team. That could work. Otherwise, they're just going to have to build with local talent. But luckily, Dusseldorf is a very strong football history and football culture.
Right. I mean, people have been clamoring for this to be a team since the season, even before the season began. They're like, if we're expanding, and if you have these NFL Europe trademarks, this better be a team coming back because the Rhine Fire were popular back in the day, one of the most recognizable. So it just made so much sense.
Aside from just, the Rhine Fire's presence, the Dusseldorf Panther have very, very decorated history in the GFL, long before, recent years haven't been as glorious for them, obviously, but they had a long history of winning a whole bunch of championships back in the day. So it's Dusseldorf just has a whole bunch of football talent in the area. Whereas when they were creating Leipzig Kings, the highest tiered team ever in Leipzig was to the 3rd tier league, whereas Dusseldorf was a multiple time championship winning city. So there's going to be a lot more of a wider spread base of talent to pull from. And, with the ELF really making a step forward as a very legitimate, very strong league, sending 14 guys to the NFL IPP combine in London, which is the most out of any European league. I think GFL was number 2 with 10 or 11 guys. So they weren't too far behind, but, ELF clear cut foremost, the most people there. And yeah, I think that team's going to have a solid amount of players to draw from. I think there's just guys that are big name talent throughout the whole German football circuit that are just from the area that may want to come back to. Like that. It's the same way with Hamburg. It was the same way with Frankfurt. Like Frankfurt already had like a fully established team to base off of. Whereas, even though the Sea Devils did have a lot of the Elmshorn Fighting Pirates players, it wasn't like player for player, like their QB1 was new, some like, Kasim Edabala was there. They just pulled a lot of guys that were from the Hamburg area that played for different teams and were basically able to build like a Hamburg super team. And that's what made the Sea Devils so good. So I think that, maybe they won't be a title contender first year, but they'll be competitive in the first year. And they'll give them something strong to work off of going into the league's third year and what would be the team's second year.
Yeah, well, they're already hitting the ground running. They actually hired on their GM recently. Patricia Clem is in there. Actually the second female GM in the league. I would say first, but Berlin signed on Diana Hogue onto their position. So, a few changes already being in place, or at least some new executive spots being filled up. Which is, of course, it's not new. There was some turnover during the season as well for some positions, but just keeping the news cycle and keeping that in there is important for people if you want to keep up with these teams. So it's nice to see that they're getting this in, and it's nice to see that Ryan has at least some executive spots filled, and they're already hitting the ground running. Their website's built up nicely too. It's actually really gorgeous. They did a great job putting it in. Speaking of that website, and to finish up the expansion conversation, so this is not on their website anymore. This was for they took it down. What I'm referencing is if you were to go to the about section on their website, the tab, and go to ELF League. This is if you translate in English, by the way. It's in German if you don't translate. But if you go to that and say it's in German, EFL Liga, it would give you the European League and football, its teams. And the original posting on the first day one of the first few days it was up had a map, and the map had filled in circles where teams were. Dusseldorf, which was a boldened like white circle saying like a coming soon, and then you had like the two, and then it showed everything else.
Yeah, the two circles,
Austrian.
Okay, there's the two new ones, yeah.
And then it had London, which we knew about London, and maybe let the cat out of the bag early, so now we're kind of knowing. And these have been rumored spots, but I think maybe they might have confirmed it on accident. Amsterdam is on this list if based on location. I had to double check. That is definitely where Amsterdam is on the map. And Paris is on this map as well, which both of them have been rumored sites for expansion, or at least have been mentioned offhandedly by the commissioner, or people have talked about it. Paris, for Christ's sake, has a connection to Commissioner Patrick Asume directly. So we might know the next three, or at least the two future sites that haven't really been talked about or confirmed, So that's removed now. If you want to find it, it's on social and other places though.
From what I understand, what I believe, I think that the London Warriors, who have been, the UK's premier club forever, won the past 6 or I don't remember how. I think it's at least every championship from like 2015 to 2019. Like maybe they missed 1 year. But otherwise, like they are the most recent powerhouse in the league. They play on the continental level as well, playing some of the other top teams here and there. They're more than well equipped to play at the ELF's level, especially when you look at how many top tier UK players are playing in. I mean, not just in the ELF and the GFL as well. I mean, you get a running back like Glenn Tunga back. Oof. I mean, that dude is an animal. Anybody that you were watching on Algar comments this year, I mean, he just puts up numbers everywhere he goes. He's an animal. And they just got the amount of UK talent throughout all European leagues is just, it's deep. It's very deep. There's just a whole bunch of talent that gets imported, but they don't have a platform to be playing at a top tier league representing their home country. And I think that, having a strong base of the London Warriors and then just adding the fact that you've got all this other top tier talent scattered across Europe every season anyway, bring a lot of those guys back, you're gonna have a really good team without even any imports. You know what I mean? You have a team that could potentially compete with, maybe you need to bring in an American QB, and like you'd have more than enough talent to run it with just that. And then you add the fact that you can bring in 3 other Americans and then another 10 EU imports if you feel you need to bolster your spots here and there. But, and I think that the Warriors will be able to use the NFL Europe licensing agreement to rebrand as the London Monarchs and bring back the London Monarchs. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And if it's not a direct thing with the team itself, I know that like the Vikings and the Swarco Raiders had to like create new companies to be a franchise, not a club. And with the same names and with the same logos and everything, and they're bringing their top team to that team, right? But it's technically a new team because it's a new business venture essentially. Mm-hmm. So what I think the London Warriors may do is just stay as they are as a club, and that the people involved up top, whatever it is, are going to then be involved with the London Monarchs as well. And it could just be the whole BAFA as a whole, the British American Football Association. They very well do it similar to the way the Barcelona Dragons did it, where it's just like, we're going to grab, what's supposed to be the best of the best from every team in the country. But I think the London Warriors are just already located in that capital city that they're trying to make sure they're getting into big markets. They're not going to be expanding into small markets, even though that's where some powerhouse teams reside, right? Sure. They're only going to want to bring in powerhouse teams that are currently in big markets, because like if you expand to a tiny little village where it's just like, this is just where the best football team happens to be, it's like, how many people are you really going to bring into the league that way? So
yeah, there's a balance there you got to play, especially with expansion. And Europe has so many large cities, or ones that, at least can draw a good crowd in a sporting complex. London makes sense just because it's just such a gem in that scene.
Exactly.
Same for Paris, Amsterdam, for crying out loud, is a party city, alone, and history as well with, football there too.
Yeah, because I mean, I think the London Monarchs have potential to be a contender in year one, just because of how good the Warriors as a program is, and just how deep the British talent is, the UK talent is across the European scene in general.
Right.
I think that it's going to be the same situation where it's going to be the Amsterdam Crusaders, who also play on this, European championship level, where they're playing against other champions and whatnot, because they're constantly on top of it. Again, they've won like every championship for the past 7 years or something like that.
Take that next step.
Again, they're going to be able to use the naming rights to become the Amsterdam Admirals again and bring back the Admirals. And the difference there is the level of talent that like it's coming out of the UK versus coming out of Amsterdam is just not the same. Mm-hmm. It's not to say that the Crusaders / Admirals will not be able to compete in the league. I think they will, but I don't think they will be contenders in year one. But again, I think, you've got those title contenders, and then even though it was kind of spaced out throughout the season, throughout this end of the year, the rest of the teams all kind of existed in one little pocket outside of the playoffs, where they were all competitive with each other, except for the Kings, who actually were title contender ready by the end of the season, but just didn't have the record and the amount of playoff spots for it. But, the rest of those, I guess it's just the three, the Thunder, the Dragons, and the Surge. I think they'll be competitive with those teams as all of them take the step forward to becoming contenders. I think eventually you're going to see each team. I can't wait to see like each team eventually win a championship down the line. But But yeah, I think Amsterdam will be, in the mix and will be able to put up some good games. I don't think we're going to see massive blowouts. I think as the years go on, we're not going to see these massive blowouts.
Well, and for all the doubts we had with Spain last year and how Barcelona evolved,
Yeah.
Even if you struggle at the beginning, that doesn't guarantee that
Yeah.
it's going to be you're down in the dumps the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
You might, you it eventually equals out, or you learn
What?
to catch up.
They made the Galaxy work for it in that game too.
Yes, they did.
They made the Galaxy really work for it in game 2. So, I think that's the other thing, is that if you just say these guys can't compete at this level and you just leave them out, they're never going to be able to compete at that level. And if you just let them keep playing, whatever bullshit clubs in their home league that they beat 60-0 every time, they're not going to get to that next level. You can only get so much better just beating up on someone that's that much worse than you.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So bringing in a team that, maybe they can't compete at that level in year 1, and they're only going to pull off a couple of upsets throughout the season, but every player on that team is going to be so much better of a player than they were at the beginning of that season. So that's why I'm cool with them bringing in, they're going to bring in contenders, but I think it's important for them to bring in teams that aren't going to be immediate contenders, because then it's like you're expanding the footprint of the league and you're growing the sport in the countries that it's not as developed. So yeah, maybe an Amsterdam team is not ready to compete for a title against the Galaxy or the Panthers or the Swarco Raiders. But if they're in a league where they're playing all of these teams every week and they're not just winning games 35-0 where they have to stop at halftime because they're beating them too badly, like, they're just going to get that much better, and then eventually they will be there at that level. And then lastly, Paris. That Paris team could very well win the championship in its very first season of existence.
Another solid country, from the outside that could come in, make some noise.
You look at the amount of French talent in the league.
That point alone, that already signifies that.
This is who you could have as part of your team, as part of the French team, Paris team, without any imports. No EU imports, no American imports. Jason Agamon and Filiz Pasqualini as your running backs.
Yep.
Both of them were top-tier running backs in the league already.
Absolutely.
Wide receivers, Anthony Dable-Wolf, Anthony Muhungu, and Remy Bertolini. What?
Which one of those? Muhungu already won a championship. So, I mean,
then big Kevin Mwamba at tight end as well. You don't need to you could use your import on an offensive lineman if you wanted to at that point. You don't need any skill positions to bring in additional talent. You have top tier caliber talent at every skill position right out the gate. And then it's like their defensive linemen. They had Mamadou C, who was on the Galaxy, Vincent Buffett on the Kings.
Mm-hmm.
Wael Nasri, the Thunder linebacker, who was he's up for Defensive Player of the Year. I can't pronounce his name right. He led the league in tackles. Animal. Timon Debiez, he was a linebacker, joined the Dragons later in the season and ended up putting up big numbers for them down the stretch. Maxime Falchis, defensive back for the Thunder. Pierre Corrigo, defensive back who was playing in Sweden and then joined the Panthers late. These are all dudes that have been playing, winning championships, playing at the top tier level. You could have some top tier ELF, multiple all-stars off of just homegrown talent. Absolutely. And that is why I think Paris, if that is confirmed happening as a team, they are going to be disgusting. Disgusting. The amount of top tier French talent is so high already. And then you add in the fact that, they're going to be able to bring in 4 Americans and then 10 EU on top of that. Because if you're one of the top tier EU import players and someone says, hey, come play with the Paris team, I think just about everyone will say yes. Because if you get all those guys there, it's over. It's over. I don't know who can stop a team loaded with that type of talent. You
Well,
know,
imagine all those people too want to go back and play in their home country. I bet that'd be special for them
exactly.
as well. You know, top of arguably right now the top league in Europe in
Yeah.
pretty much one season. You could argue. You know, even detractors we've known they've changed their stance on just how the league compares to other European leagues, especially with Austria even just being added in.
Mhm.
You know, those two top teams now. It's like, okay, we
Yeah.
really have
It was
made
it was
a stance, haven't we?
it was kind of funny because like I remember Sume made a statement that like we are the best league in Europe like 3 weeks before the championship, 2 weeks before the championship. And like AFI, American Football International, posted it on their Instagram, and there was just all these comments back and forth. People arguing. You know, I've seen it throughout the season of who's arguing of whether or not the ELF is legitimate. Like week 1, some GFL guys were trying to clown them, like you guys could never play in this league. But then by the end of the season, you know, they're at the games, watching the games, and like, you know, posting pictures on their Snapchat or on their Instagram story, watching the games. And it's like the moment Vienna Vikings and Swarco Raiders said, yeah, we're here, we're in it, it's official, that discussion ended, right? Because the discussion was, is the ELF the best league? Is the AFL the best league? Is the GFL the best leagues? The AFL always had going for it the fact that the Vienna Vikings and the Swarco Raiders were that much better than just about every club out there, you know? Like, yes, Swarco Raiders lost to the Swabish Hall Unicorns in the CEFL tournament this year on a last-second touchdown, right? So they're this, you know, Unicorns only this much better than them, and the Unicorns stomped over everybody in the GFL South this year. And that was kind of their regular thing. They haven't lost a regular season game since like 2014. So, you know, there's only so many teams that are on the Unicorns level, and the fact that, you know, Vienna Vikings and Swarco Raiders are right there always gave the AFL that, you know, potential leg up of, you know, maybe they are the better league. We don't know if you were to take like the best players of the best players.
Well,
Whatever.
I think that's also
With
kind of
them in
showing
the
a
ELF
sway and
now, that discussion is dead. If you sitting at home watching this, listen to this right now, if you seriously, genuinely think that the GFL is a better league than the ELF for the 2022 season, please send me whatever you're smoking, because it is like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, it's just there's no way around it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, the level of talent was very high, and then you add the two powerhouses, like everybody that, and it's like with the two of them and the Roswab Panthers already in it, every top tier league in Europe is coming. They're coming. They're not there yet, but they're coming. Stockholm Meme Machines, probably, I mean, it's going to happen. You know what I mean? Copenhagen Towers, it's going to happen. Helsinki Roosters, most likely who's going to come from Finland, just because of their history and because of, you know, the fact that they're in, you know, the capital. Whereas even though the Kuopio Steelers technically are the better team right now, they have won the last 2 championships. It's just like, that's like, they're in the 9th biggest city in Finland.
Market still is in play there, so you got to think that
the market size is really I think what ultimately going to make some of the decisions. You know, Istanbul is still there. The Kok Rams, I don't know how it's pronounced. It's got a little squiggle on the bottom of the C, and I'm a dumb American. I'm sorry, everybody.
I'm gonna have to land in that category for right now.
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
But you know, the product is proven now. It's not, you know, every question mark that was there going into year 1 is gone. And even though, you know, maybe it's a couple of these other powerhouses coming in as a rebrand, I think Paris is just going to be a fresh team on its own, because I think the French league typically plays in the winter, so it's like there's not going to be overlap. So they may not want to pull a club in. You know what I mean? Like if they just make a team, they don't have to pull a club in necessarily. Yeah, I think outside of that, I mean, I think you're just going to start seeing powerhouse teams come in. And it's going to be interesting. I don't know how big they're going to grow. I don't know if they're going to want to go all the way up to 32 teams. it'll be a long standing process to get there. But I mean, they're not as developed, but you start getting into that Eastern Europe, into the Balkan region, like every country still has a league, and every league has a powerhouse team that's looking to play at a higher level still. So, the Bucharest Rebels, as Aaron is very well aware of.
Yes, of course.
But the Bucharest Rebels are a team that I think could potentially be in this league and down the line. I think the Moscow Spartans are another team that could eventually be pulled in. I think the Kyiv Capitals in Ukraine, I mean, they got a very good set of.
So that's the thing. Make me curious. No, I'm just saying that makes me curious as to how far they would want to go. I will say that the target before the season ever started was 20 teams in 3 years. So if the map shows anything, we're up to 14. At least if the map stays consistent as it was showing on Ryan's website or the Fire's website. Wow, that was blunted or messed up. But hey, I mean, you got those options. Eastern Europe is still part of Europe. It would be part of the European League of Football.
I mean, if I'm gonna make a quick bold assumption, I guess, of if they're going up to 20 teams, with where we're at now with Amsterdam, London, and Paris, in my mind, they're confirmed. That's happening in my mind. It's not official yet, but based off of that little tidbit, that little leak, I think that's like a given. And it was kind of like the writing was already on the walls for it. I was already saying I think Paris should be it specifically because of the talent. And I think that, having that strong of a team right out the gate is how you get fans to come to the games. Because if it's like, they're like, hey, the Paris CLF team is undefeated and is just lighting it up and is putting on a show every game, people are going to want to come. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And,
get a spectacle,
so if we're going from there, and there's only going to be 6 more, I think we'll see Stockholm Mean Machines. I think we'll see the Copenhagen Towers. I think we'll see the Coke Rams out of Istanbul and Turkey. The Helsinki Roosters out of Finland. Okay. We could see, that's the thing. There's already a Vikings team, but the Norway's powerhouse is the Oslo Vikings. So, no, we're gonna see the Milano Seamen. I forgot about the Milano Seamen.
Yeah, well, yeah. If Italy is calm and one of them jumps ship, which you never know.
And you know what? Like, the federation might be against it, but if the club and all the players are down, then it doesn't matter what they say at the end of the day, because it'll be beyond them at that point.
The monetary opportunities too, if the TV keeps growing like they're showing and the product looks nicer, it gets your name out better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for yours to take if you want.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the Calanda Broncos out of Switzerland, I think. Yeah. I think those 6 are going to be the teams that come in because they get pretty solid. They're all in relatively big markets. I think Calanda Broncos actually were in a smaller village and moved into a city so they could bring more fans in, so that because of how popular they were and how good of a team they are. And then 2019, they went to the last second for the CEFL championship against the Swarco Raiders, and they played a pretty respectable game against the Schwäbisch Hall Unicorns this year too. They're a good team. They'll be ready. If they do come in, I don't know I'd love to see them come in this year, honestly. But when they come in, they'll be a contender as well. There's a lot of really good teams, I think, that are all coming in soon. I think that these new teams being made aren't really going to happen much outside of maybe this first round of expansion. I think from there, it's just going to be new guys, existing clubs coming in.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. The Austrian example is probably what will be the norm moving into year 3, maybe even more into what is going to be off season going into year 2. Because Dusseldorf, I think they just wanted it badly to get that branding.
They wanted the market. They wanted the brand. They knew what it meant. It worked. They got 5,000 plus followers on Instagram already. It hasn't even been a week,
Oh yeah. Yeah. They struck a chord really well. The hype was real and it kind of just exploded. So they got something going on. And I think,
it looks so dope too.
I love the logo. Someone
the updated logo was. I really like this, but the updated one looks even cooler in my opinion.
that was what somebody brought up. They're like, I think to them now credit. I can have different opinions for everybody, but to them, they're like, this is probably the first of the revamped NFL Europe logos that looks better than the original. And I'm like, you know what? I might agree with that. That kind of, I don't know. And like you look at the helmets which they've shown them on trailers already and on their website.
Yeah.
It actually flows better than the original in the helmets.
Mhm.
Like it looks like almost a wing, or the flame just looks better than the old flame. Like that one, the curl, I was like, it's a little awkward positioning for the curl on it.
And you know what? I will disagree with that because I think the Dragon's new logo looks significantly better than like the card.
See, that's what I think. That's the other one I love a lot better too.
Yeah, I like the Surge logo, even though it wasn't technically Europe because it was the Sacramento Surge.
Right.
But I do like the updated logo too for that.
Yeah, WLA, World League of American Football, OGs out there. No, I think to me, if we're just on this topic here, something we brought up at the beginning of the year, can we like get the Galaxy to go back to like purple, orange, and white instead of purple, gold, and black? Because I want the OG colors back, and I also want to be able to see, like I said, on TV, the logos like blend in with the black helmets. They don't look. Right. I don't like it. So just my opinion.
At the very least, get a brighter shade of purple then if you're gonna
correct
do that, because they're doing like the darkest shade of purple on a black helmet. It's like,
yeah. I mean, they have a thin gold outline if you look really close, but it's only when you zoom the camera into the helmets you're like, okay, that still looks like it's a black helmet with like maybe a purple speck on it.
Yeah, they'll learn. I do like the dark purple jerseys were really cool though, I will say.
Oh yeah. They did a good job. I mean, they kept the original design. It's just that I wish the colors, give me the orange, man. Like I like the orange.
Yeah, I mean, they may have had to separate that from the Frankfurt universe.
Yeah.
And I think that may have really been what did it. It's because like the Frankfurt universe colors were almost identical to the Galaxy. Because you got to remember, it was literally created. The club was founded by Galaxy fans.
Yes.
And became to live on in the Galaxy's name until the Galaxy came back. And that's why I had no problem with all the players going, yeah, no, we're out of here. We're out of here. And going right to the Galaxy because that's what they were there for in the first place. You know what I mean? So it just made sense to me.
Yeah. But it's exciting. It's a good time for the ELF in terms of that front. I think they did a great job. The hype for it was intense, and I think almost it might have, like the way they just jumped on it on Saturday. No one out of the blue knew it was going to come down that way. I mean, they did a great job announcing it. So I imagine they'll do great with the next ones ahead. Even though they might have spoiled it already with the cities, but that doesn't mean we know exactly who, what, when, and why.
What
with the rest.
Exactly.
But
we don't, as much as I can make these speculations that it's going to be the Warriors, it's going to be the Crusaders, like we don't know for sure exactly how the teams are going to be built because, there's so much more paperwork and whatnot that has to go on behind the scenes that, maybe those clubs aren't ready to come in on a financial level and that the league has to then find financial backers and make a new team and do things differently. So, we'll see as it unfolds.
Yeah. So I guess we'll transition here as we end kind of on a lukewarm note here with the All-Star game, because last week when we talked post-show, I didn't realize this, but you and Aaron kind of knew about this, and I went, oh, well, this kind of sucks. The All-Star game, as it was advertised, is kind of not turning into what a part of it was advertised, at least with the U.S. team. And some other details you guys and others have uncovered, which is unfortunate. If you like to go and explain, it's a shame to me for what you're about to tell here.
First off, it is kind of weird that there are a bunch of non-US players on Team USA. I think it's just a matter of they needed to fill roster spots. They got as many guys as they could. There was surprisingly more people from the States that weren't playing anywhere going over to play. So I finally, my initial pass through, I did see that there were a good amount of, particularly offensive linemen that were, from the Dragon, like a guy from the Dragons, a guy from the Thunder, a guy from the Kings, like handful of offensive linemen, all from European countries playing as offensive linemen for Team USA.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of doesn't make sense in my opinion. I get it. You can't just get offensive linemen don't just like grow on trees. You know what I mean? And
Correct.
when in an import heavy sport that European football is, you only have so many Americans you can bring in. You're not going to use that on linemen. As useful and as much better as American offensive linemen will be, you just don't do that because you need, like, when you're bringing in your import player, you're bringing in someone who's like changing the way the game is played for you. You're not just bringing in, you know, someone who, unfortunately, just as a lineman, you're a role player. You know, you're not a star. That's just the nature of the beast. I was a lineman back in my playing days. I get it. You know,
lineman to lineman here. You know, same deal.
You know, there's no glory in being a lineman, and that's a big part of why you don't see offensive lineman imports, because you're supposed to be bringing in your limelight star players with your imports. And because of that, there's not a lot of offensive linemen just like in Europe. You know what I mean? So there's a handful of guys. There's surprisingly, if you've been following the saga of the San Antonio Valor, the arena football team that stole the Washington Valor's names, did not pay any of their players or coaches, and everything came crashing down. One note, just on the side, because I learned yesterday, the guy who's responsible for all that got 20 years in prison, if you didn't know that.
He did.
So
yes, he
that
did.
happened. But there's a handful of San Antonio Valor players on this Team USA roster. A couple wide receivers, a couple offensive linemen. So some guys are really taking the trip out. You know, I saw a handful of guys on the roster that are just rookies that graduated in 2020 that just haven't played anywhere, but they saw an opportunity to go play for Team USA on, you know, and in the ELF is definitely looking like a much bigger opportunity for players. So I think a lot of guys see playing in the All-Star game as a tryout for the GMs of all the teams that are be looking for American imports for 2022.
Right. And the way it's being structured, I understand, is kind of like a showcase. It's not, I mean, I understand the Americans have to pay in at least, or players have to pay in to do this. And again, from what you know, from what I understand, you letting me know, which, I mean, there's a showcase then, you know, it's nice to see those Valor players are getting a chance, because the way that situation ended was god awful. And I'm glad the man is going to jail for defrauding tons of different vendors and players, almost $1 million of defrauding people over the course of like 5-ish years or so. I think 3 to 5. I don't remember which, but
I don't know what he thought he was going to get away with.
I don't understand it. And apparently, and he didn't even own the mark either. You know, from what I understand, it's one of the guys in the NAL owns that mark, so that's a completely different thing. Whatever. Crazy that even went on.
Exactly. And you know, I mean, look, it is kind of I have weird feelings about, you know, the Team USA having to pay to play. But you know what? At the end of the day, those guys made that decision that they were going to pay, and that they were okay with it because whatever different reason it was, whether it's like, you know, I don't care, I will pay this fee because I just want to play a game. That could just be off of straight love for the game. Some guys are, you know, what I think are paying for a showcase opportunity to be like, okay, like I'm here, I've never played professionally. It looks like there's a handful of guys that just haven't played professional, or if they haven't played overseas. So they're coming to this game and taking, you know, this opportunity to get high quality film, which honestly, can't blame you. If you don't have good quality film and but whatever the price is to go play in the game, and, you know, what you get in exchange is good film and an opportunity to play in front of, you know, on a big stage, then for some guys, it's actually going to be a big boon for their career. So although I have, you know, paying to have to play is weird in my opinion, but I think I think if guys either have a way to justify it or they see like this is a big opportunity that I'm going to take. So I think it is what it is with it. But what I will say is the rosters are pretty stacked.
Yes.
For USA, man. For those that aren't fully tapped into the European scene, the quarterback that they're bringing in is Connor Miller, who just played for the Graz Giants in Austria. He led the Austrian league, so that is playing against the Swarco Raiders and the Vienna Vikings. He led the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And part of it was the incredible receiver he had in Darrell Adams, who's not on Team USA, unfortunately. But Connor Miller was just slinging it, balling. I mean, it wasn't just to, Adams. He's hitting all these other, all their homegrown talent as well. He's just a hell of a player, great quarterback. And I think, with him under center for Team USA, that immediately, in my opinion, makes this a competitive and entertaining game, especially if you're getting, there's offensive linemen that were playing against these guys on the ELF All-Star team. So it's dudes that have been ready to play against this level. So I think it's going to be a good game, man. They brought in some real familiar names. Kennedy Adams, running back from Frankfurt Galaxy. He's a half American, half Russian. So he didn't count as an American for the Galaxy, but I mean, he actually is part American and played for Bemidji State in the United States. Like, dude's a dynamic playmaker. You saw him in the championship game take like a 40-yard touchdown run. They're bringing in, who else they got? They got Shontavious Jones from the Berlin Thunder. I mean, I don't think he needs any introduction to the way he's played this past year. They got William Lloyd and Darius Robinson from the Wrocław Panthers. Like, this is quite possibly one of the deadliest duos of defensive players in Europe, between the two of them. And then who else they got here? They got Mike Taylor, my guy Mike Taylor from the Cologne Centurions, playing on the defensive line as well. Jamal White also in that defensive backfield from the Berlin Thunder.
Not bad.
And then on top of that, you have Darius Lewis, who's been playing the Karlstad Crusaders in Sweden the past 2 years. That dude is an animal. Like, it's crazy. Same for his name. Darius Robinson is like a lockdown defensive back and a great kick returner. Like, I say the exact same thing about Darius Lewis. Very great player. So to have Jamal White, Darius Lewis, Darius Robinson, and they have David Richardson in that defensive backfield. Sheesh. I mean, good luck to, I think, who's it? Is Sullivan the starting QB for?
Yeah, Jacob Sullivan will be the starting QB for that.
That is not going to be an easy defense to play against, man.
Right. Weinreich, they'll both have to deal with that at the same time.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good game. I mean, they brought in Rashad Still at wide receiver too. He just played a season in Hungary with the Enthroners and then a season in Finland with the Helsinki Roosters. I mean, he had a game. He had at least, I know he had one game in Finland where he had like 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, he was putting up stupid numbers. He's an incredible receiver as well. So they have a very good quarterback, 2 very good receivers, and a scary defense. And then there's a lot of guys whose names I just don't really recognize because a lot of them are just coming either straight out of college or, out of a terrible arena agreement to try to, bounce back. And, there's going to be a good amount of talent. And I think there's going to be some names that pop off in this game that are going to be like, a lot of people are going to be like, who's that guy? You know what I mean? There's going to be a couple of names here and there, like, oh, who's that guy? Where did he come from? Like,
right.
And I think that some guys, I mean, if there really are this many rookies that are just like jumping on the opportunity to come play for Team USA, then, these are guys that we may end up seeing next year with one of these teams. They may be crying out for it.
Well, yeah, bringing up the showcase again. That's what you can take from this, team, you're going to have at least coaching personnel in attendance. So, and then things, if it's like we're expecting already, where we're seeing Madre London sign, people are going to get scouted for next year already, and you're going to start seeing rosters getting built, hopefully, and news being generated as the offseason goes on. Because it feels like they're trying to be like similar NFL media circus, where it's like, let's hype up these news announcements. Let's put this on our website.
They've been doing a real good job with that too, I must say.
So that's exactly, that's what you'll get out of this. And I hope that there's some good rookies that come out of this. Like we see this game here on October 3rd, and we're like, keep our eyes peeled for these guys getting signed elsewhere. So looking forward to that. The All-Star game, folks, that is going to be played. That's going to be played at 3:30 Central European Standard Time. That was weird how I put that in extra, which that will be 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time for those, watching in the morning. If you're a soccer fan, you're used to that. And if you're a fan of this league, you're getting used to it pretty quick. Yeah. So that's kind of how I've been.
9 a.m. on a Saturday or a Sunday isn't bad.
And if you're Vince, you're used to it like all the time. So, I mean, who are we kidding, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man.
Vince, thank you. Thanks as always for coming on. I owe you a beer, really. for all the show.
I'm going to show up in your town one day, and I'm going to hold you to it, unannounced.
Okay.
Unannounced.
come to Naptown, man. I'll be here. I got a few places I could take you.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to hold you to it.
We'll do. Please do. For Vince, I'm Zach Keilman saying so long. Thanks for watching and tuning in, and just really, getting to talk the league with us through the season. We've had a blast meeting some of you people out there as the year's gone on, and there's plenty more football where that came from for next year. They aren't going away. They're getting bigger. We're going to bring this. We're going to keep talking about it, maybe even off season wise, or next year. I imagine both him and I, as long as we're enjoying ourselves on this show, we're going to keep talking the league. So, until next time, folks, thanks as always. Stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe to my channel here, and be sure to follow Vince as well. Instagram and Twitter, Alt Football Scout. Be sure to give him a follow. He does a lot of stuff with all these other leagues too, not just the ELF. A lot of good content there. But guys, catch you next time.
So long.
The Gridiron Gallery podcast. New episodes every Friday on your favorite podcast platforms, YouTube, and premiering first, as always, at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, only on unhingedsn.com.